Hello and welcome to the Moster Show. My name is Naftuli Moster. In this episode, I speak with a woman who comes from a Haredi community and has launched what she describes as a movement of, quote, new Haredim. So if, like me, you're curious about what was wrong with the old Haredim and what the alternative that this new movement of new Haredim brings, keep watching and listening. Please note that this was recorded back in December of 2025, but it's airing now for the first time in February of 2026. The timing is actually quite relevant now given the heightened tensions around the Haredi draft and the protests and riots it has triggered within the Haredi sector. Also, please note that the conversation ended rather abruptly because I had to run to another meeting, and apologies for that. It's a long discussion, and while I personally like to record things at a slower pace so that it's clear and thoughtful, you may want to listen to it at 1.25% or something like that. Before we begin, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel, like and comment, and very importantly, please share this episode with friends, family, and colleagues. For questions or comments or to suggest guests, please email us at info@themostershow.com. And of course, we invite sponsors for all our episodes. Please contact us at info@themostershow.com. Enjoy the episode. Today, we're speaking with Pnina Pfeuffer, who's the CEO of the New Haredim. She's a social and political activist, a mother, and she lives in Jerusalem. Welcome, Pnina. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
Before we dive into your work, if we could begin a little bit about you, if you could tell me a little bit about your background. I believe you have Haredi roots and you spent some time in the U.S., so tell us a little bit about your background.
So I am Pnina. I'm 47 today. Today is my birthday.
Wow, happy birthday.
Yeah, my non-Jewish birthday. My Jewish birthday is on Bet Kislev, but today is December 2nd, and I celebrate both and whatever's in between, and there's even Isru Chag if necessary, so today's my birthday. I have 2 daughters, and I live in Jerusalem. I grew up in Jerusalem. I was born in Jerusalem. I was born to a Haredi family that comes from the United States, meaning my parents are originally from there, but their parents are all, Eastern European Holocaust survivors. My family is Haredi way back. Like there's no Baal Tshuva or anything else going on in the family tree. On my mother's side, it's Litvish. On my father's side, it's Hasidish, but everybody's somewhere in the Haredi spectrum. And yeah, so I grew up in
your parents had a little bit of a mixed marriage like I do with me and my wife. I come from a Hasidish background. She comes from a Litvish. But go on.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a mixed marriage in certain senses. So I'd say that I grew up Litvish sociologically, meaning the schools we attended and our social circles and sort of way of life was yeshivish. But we had, Hasidish minhagim, and my father was a bekasha, my brother was a bekasha. My father's affiliated with Baba. My grandfather was a Baba Chassid. So there's definitely that side. But if you had to say, did I grow up Hasidish? The answer is really no.
Got it. So what would you? So you said you were more like Litvish, and but either way, you were Haredi.
Yeshivish,
Right.
Yeah, Haredi, Yeshivish, Beis Yaakov. My brother went to yeshivas. My ex learned in yeshiva. My brother-in-laws are still in learning.
I see. So your family is still very much like that. Do you consider yourself Haredi, or perhaps maybe you're a new Haredi?
Yeah, it took me a while to kind of adapt to using it as an identity. I think because it's sort of it's less defined and it's less of a community in the sense that you send to specific schools or you go to specific shul in order to belong. So, different people do and don't define themselves through that identity, but I do.
Right.
I've found, I found that, when I was younger and I had all these feminist ideas, I didn't always like using that as an identity. I would say I'm egalitarian, I believe in equality. I didn't really understand why I had to use a specific term. Or when I wanted to, promote certain left-wing political ideas also, I didn't feel like necessarily the label was what made the ideology, and I still don't, but I do know today that it's a shortcut to explaining to people who you are and what you want to get done. Like, it
Right.
saves a lot of time if you don't have to explain every time what you stand for, and you just say, this is who I am, and you accept the things that even you may not be 100% comfortable within that identity in order to make sense of the world for other people, not just for myself.
Interesting. Wow. I have a whole section of questions on that topic. So
Go ahead.
we're going to get to that more later. I've known you for quite a few years, mostly from my own time doing advocacy, but Israel is sort of like really its own world. So I can't really say that I've known a lot about you or everything that you do. So except that you're an activist in Israel and that your work involves the Haredi community. But of course, I've done research in preparation for the interview, and I've come across various initiatives that you are or had been involved in. So, of course, I think you run and maybe founded this initiative or organization called the New Haredim. I saw some connection with something called Hatzibur HaCharedi HaMamlachti. I saw that you founded a thing called Mizrach. And finally, I thought I saw that you were involved with an organization or initiative called Darkenu or Darchenu. So if you could tell me a little bit about all these different things, how they sort of relate to each other, or in what ways they're completely separate, and then we'll sort of dive in more specifically to what you're currently working on.
So Darkeno is actually a place of work, of employment. It's an organization that I'd say is on the center left, more to the center than the left. And it's sort of, it started off as a political campaign called V15 that was trying to overthrow Netanyahu in 2015, Victory 15. We all know how that ended and how successful that endeavor was. But it after that great success, it turned into an organization called Darkenu that's like kind of a centrist organization. Honestly, I was further left than the organization was. It wasn't such a it wasn't a good fit because it was like trying to sort of consolidate the non-religious center left. Like, it wasn't activism, it wasn't my politics, but you know, it still exists. So that's Darkenu. The Tzibur Haredim Mamlachti is just the new Haredim in Hebrew. There's no way of translating it, and the terminology that people overseas are familiar with, just like I spoke about terminology before, is the new Haredim. Like, when I say the new Haredim to you, you have an idea in your mind of what that would mean or what that would look like. If I said Tzibur Haredim Mamlachti, you might not. So I use that.
Hold on. Okay, I get that part. I get the new Haredim part, but why can't you just say HaCharedim HaChadashim or something like that? How does that?
Oh, do you want to go through all the hours of like deciding how we were going to call the organization and how we chose the
No, I don't want
logo? Yeah, there were so many options. It could have been Haredim Chadashim, Haredim Israelim, Haredim
to.
Modernim, Haredim Ovdim. There's so many
I see.
options. We chose Mamlachti because it sort of signifies being being a citizen. When you're Mamlachti, you're part of the Mamlacha. You're part of the state as a citizen. So that
Thanks.
was what we were trying to signify, saying we're Haredi, but we're also part of full citizenship in this country.
Wow. I see. So that is to contrast it with how you view the mainstream Haredim who feel like they're sort of a separate entity almost onto its own.
Yeah, I'd say, well, not completely separate, except I'd say the only ones who are really separate maybe are Haredim who don't have a political voice for, by choice, like Mea Sharim and, all that, Nature Karta, whatever, that choose not to be involved in the state and, see it as really a separate entity from themselves. But mainstream Haredi Judaism, which is over 90% of Haredim in Israel, do have a vote. So I wouldn't think it's, it's not accurate to say that they're completely separate, but they're also not completely integrated. And I think that's coming from both sides of the aisle, meaning both the Haredim themselves and the other groups in Israel are saying there's some degree of separation between the two
Right.
groups.
So yeah, if you could tell me a little bit about, let's dive into this new Haredim or Hatzibur HaCharedi HaMamlachti, what it is, why you founded it, what it does, who's involved, and so forth.
Okay, so basically, I founded it 6 years ago. It was right before COVID, and it was sort of taking all this different activism that I was involved in or aware of and not involved in, and saying, okay, we have this group, it's developing an identity, it does not have political power of any kind. And in Israel, especially, I think everywhere in the world, not having political institutions and not having educational institutions and newspapers or whatever it is that, gives you identity and clout is something that you want to develop when you're trying to consolidate a movement and bring it forward. I made the calculations, some have done it before me, that we're not big enough, and the setup in Israel politically is not in our favor to create our own political party or do it that way. So I thought it was a very modest endeavor, saying, okay, let's take all the people who are doing things, who are involved in change that has to do with policy, meaning there are people in the Haredi community doing amazing things that are not policy driven. They're helping poor people, they're helping sick children, they're helping widows, orphans. That's great. But
Right.
that's not what we're doing here. We're looking at policy changes in education, in fighting sexual abuse, in women's role in, decision making and around decision making tables and representation. So those are the things that we're looking at. We're policy driven. So people who are, activists or have organizations or initiatives within that sphere, and they have to say my personal politics, who I don't think are extreme as far as, right-wing politics, because there are right-wing people in my group. It's not, an exclusively left-wing endeavor. I'd be left, kind of on my own if I if I did that. But or in a smaller company. But yeah, but my group has, today we started out with 15 people. 6 years later we have almost 130 people. I just checked the other day. And it's not, we're very welcoming, but we're also very intentional about who can join the group, not because we're snobby, but because, again, there are many, many people who would like to have a discussion, okay, about what should be done,
Right.
or whatever. But I want the people who are actually going to do something about it in this group. Other groups, great. You can have wider groups for discussions and exchange of ideas. But the idea of this group is to move things forward in the direction that, we want to see things going, and to be a lobby, and to be able to send out even like an official letter when if Berland is lighting in Miron, we're going to send a letter to the Knesset saying this is not okay, and we can do it as a group.
So just for context for the viewers, Rabbi Berland was considered a holy man, but a lot of accusations of sexual impropriety came out, and I think he
He
was
was
arrested.
convicted.
Yeah, and he was arrested. He did some time in prison, but then he came out an even bigger tzaddik and whatever.
Yeah.
So people still turn to him and look up to him, and he still gets a lot of these sort of honors of lighting the bonfire and so
Which
forth.
is a state official event. It's paid for by the state, meaning it's taxpayer money. That's why we have a say.
Right.
I don't
Right.
get to light, a torch on Miron if just because I'm a nice person. This is, it's a political statement.
I see. I see. Okay. So if I understand it correctly, the new Haredim, Tzibur Mamlachti Haredi, is basically, it's more or less like a network of some sort, right? Or there's a different term for it, sort of like a collection of organizations. Is there central staff? Like, are you in like the central staff bringing together these organizations?
Um, I am the central staff. There are other people who are, also very much involved. This year I'm doing it voluntarily. Like, there's no paid staff.
Oh, wow.
There was slightly paid staff for a while, but now there isn't. It's fine. And for example, we're organizing a conference in January on new Haredim and democracy, and how we fit into the democratic liberal camp in Israel, and we're inviting politicians from the center left to meet us.
I see. Why specifically then?
Because there's an organization that I belong to, and some other people in the group belong to, that's that offered to organize it with us, and it's in their interest to build that bridge.
I see. Got it. And how many people within the Haredi community would you say are considered part of this new Haredim? In other words, let's say there are, I don't know, 500,000 Haredim. I'm throwing out a number. You probably actually know the number. If you know, you could go ahead and shoot it out.
It's somewhere between 1 million and 1.2 million.
I was off by a lot. So there are like one.
But there are 500,000 Haredi children,
Okay. So
at
you
least.
say children alone, there are 500,000, but there are one to 1.2 million Haredim overall. And of those, 1.1 to 1.2 million, what kind of sliver would you say is really considered new Haredim?
Okay, you're implying something already by saying sliver.
Okay, what
Maybe we're a
slice?
slice. Maybe we're a whole pie.
You tell me.
But it's interesting that you say that, because obviously that's what most people have in their head when they encounter this type of, movement or whatever. The answer is it's a spectrum, and also it's it's a little more complex than we used to think about. It used to be just like put all the Haredim on a spectrum, line them up, and the
Right.
ones who are under this and this percent, we'll just call them the modern ones, right? But it doesn't really work like that, because people are complex, and they have complex identities and different loyalties, and you can be a Belzer Chassid, but you can also be modern. You could be, you could have different combinations of things. You could be yeshivish, but also be a feminist. You can be Sephardi, but also be very Zionist. There's all kinds of different ways of measuring it.
Right.
So I'm not going to go into all the statistics and details. You can talk to our mutual friend Chumi Yafa about that. But the bottom line is it's between 25 and 30% who relate to this ideology in one way or another. Some very strongly, some obviously less.
Got it. So let's talk. So let's talk about that ideology. Give me like, I don't know, 5, 10, or maybe it's just 3 sort of key issues that this group kind of feels should be different in the Haredi community, and that's what they're pushing for.
Okay, so there are 3 main things that people, researchers usually look at, which is education, academics, employment, and army service. Any of those would be considered windows into general Israeli society. But you have people who have all of those who still wouldn't be considered necessarily part of this group, and you have people who have none of those who would be. So
Let's take a step back. If we could take a step back, those are 3 issues that, okay, education, the regular Israeli schools provide a pretty robust secular education. Work, general Israeli society goes out to work. And the army, again, the general Israeli society, at least most men, right, when they reach a certain age, they have to enlist in the army. That's a given, right? Whereas
most women too.
Most women in the secular Israeli society do as well. Okay, that's great. So then, whereas in the Haredi population, on all of these 3 issues, they come up short, so to speak, or they don't do that. So on secular education, they tend to either not provide at all or provide very little.
For men, women
Right,
get very good
right.
secular
For the
education.
men, yes, good point. When it comes to work, again, a lot of the men, they continue learning in Kollel, so they don't go out to work as much. And I think the women would go to work. They have nothing against it, except they tend to raise large families, right? So that's,
Most Haredi women work
but most Haredi women do work.
and raise.
Wow. Okay. See, very impressive. And then you have the third issue is, of course, serving in the military, which is probably like the hottest one of all at this point, where the Haredim have refused to enlist, and there have been government sanctioned carve outs for yeshiva guys, yeshiva boys to be exempt from it. Okay, so those are the 3 main topics, and you're basically saying, if I'm understanding correctly, that the new Haredim, this sliver or large slice of the Haredi population, is sort of like the wedge between. They are Haredi, but they believe that they should sort of comply or whatever with, on these 3 topics, correct?
Okay, so I want to say that in general, most super ideologically driven in most places, not just in this particular instance. So most of the new Haredim are new Haredim in practice, meaning they're not thinking, they're not writing policy papers and theological theses and polemics about what it means for me to be a new Haredi and the ethics of it and yada yada. They're thinking, I have 4 kids, I need a job. That's where most people are at, and that's normal. That doesn't need to change, okay? That's normal. But then you have a smaller group that's trying to develop policy and ideology and sort of create the more theoretical and political infrastructure for this to exist, if that makes sense.
Right. I get that. But I'm saying without getting into sort of the,
Right.
theological
So
or
what are the things that make you a new Haredi are more in practice than in ideology. Like the only way you can really know what the ideology is if you talk to people on a personal level. Like if you have a conversation with me, I can do that now. But most people are going to be considered new Haredim just because they have a job in high tech, or they wear a blue shirt,
I
or
see.
they're sending their kid, they're okay with their kid going to the movies, or they're fine with, you know what I'm saying? Like it's much more, the way you're going to measure it on a large scale is not
Right.
through ideology, it's through practice. It's how people live and what they do. Theologically, for me, I'm a very idealistic person, so I have ideas that pertain to how I want to live in the Haredi world, how I want to live in the world in general. Some of them are, I'd say, something that most, new Haredim would agree with. For example, you know what? I don't know. Like, for example, women's representation. There's a slice of new Haredim who are totally on board with that. They're in my group. Are there new Haredim who think Haredi men who are not learning should serve in the army, who think that going out to work is a positive, who think you should go get a career and a degree and and think that it's not okay for women to be around the decision-making tables or don't care about it? Yes, there are many. In general, in most societies, like chauvinism is the last thing out the door, so it's
I
true
see.
here as well. Again, the army, does everybody agree amongst the new Haredim that that's like the be-all and end-all and that's what has to be? No. Are there a lot more new Haredim who are thinking in that direction? Yes.
Got it. Just sort of as a side note, the new Haredim is not overlapping with or associated with Yotzim, like ex-Haredim. Is that correct?
Generally, that's correct. Obviously, we all know somebody who belongs in that category. And I actually used their court case as an argument in a court case that I was involved in, which basically they petitioned the court. There are all kinds of DEI
Category.
situations. What? For Haredim, like if you're for Haredi and you want to go to the army or to academia, then there are all kinds of stipends and scholarships and things available to help you out. And the Yotzim, who basically are no longer religious but have the same background issues coming in, wanted to be recognized in order to be eligible for these stipends as well. And so they petitioned the court, and their petition said, you owe it to us because we deserved an education, which we didn't get. And the court, I'm making this very short, the court said, go sue your parents because your parents are responsible for your education. The state is responsible to provide schools for said education. This was their stance. So when I petitioned the court with a group about having public Haredi education, which is one of our, so there was a school in Mevaseret that wanted to move over from being a private school to being a public Haredi school, and the municipality wasn't interested. Whatever, we're not going to get into it again. But we petitioned, and in the explanations, we said, if you're going to say that it's the parents' responsibility, but you have to provide the schools, then okay, then
Go
provide the
ahead,
schools.
provide the schools. I see. Interesting. And you prevailed on that?
No, because the court ruled against us on technical issues, meaning that there weren't enough children in the class who were from that township, and
I see.
so they couldn't force the township to pay, to fund it or whatever.
Let's see.
but that's how the court moves, and it did, move things ahead. And I have to say on that front that things are surprisingly moving well.
Okay, on that front being, because we didn't actually discuss it in detail,
Right.
being also schools known as Haredim Mamlachti, which means the Haredi schools, but they're government run and operated and funded, and they do provide a more or full secular education.
Equals, they have to provide the same. It's public school. It's whatever public schools
Wow.
provide. They have to be up to that standard.
Right. So it provides a full secular education. And you're saying that that's catching on in the Haredi world. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Bells has actually joined this umbrella with many of its schools just this year.
Many? What do you mean by many? I mean, I come from Bells, so this obviously is music to my ears, but tell me what you mean by
It should
many.
be. Okay, so Bells runs all its schools, boys, girls, yeshivas, high schools, kollels, whatever they have. And the boys' schools don't get a lot of funding because they're private and they don't have almost any secular education. And for, again, a whole bunch of reasons, some political, some financial, etc. And there was a lot of backlash within, the Haredi political sphere, like the Degel and Aguda. They didn't want them to do it, and they promised them they wanted to do it already in the last government, and they sort of made them hold out and said, in this government, we'll fix it up and we'll make, so you won't have to do it. But they saw it wasn't working. And the Belzer Rebbe, when he wants to do something, he might wait around a little bit, but he doesn't wait around forever. And he was just like, I'm doing this. So basically now in Bells, in the Chadarim, they're going to be teaching English and math and reading and writing and basic skills. We're not talking about high school now. We're talking about elementary
That's
school.
what you mean. That's what you meant by some, because it's only the elementary and middle schools, not the high schools. But earlier, when you described what these schools are required to provide, you said it has to be equal to the public schools. But now, when you were sort of telling me what Bells is going to be teaching, I noticed that you didn't mention science and social studies.
Science, yes.
Yeah? When are they starting? How soon are they starting?
They already started.
So you're telling me Bells boys attending schools in Bells schools in Chadarim, in Yerushalayim and Bnei Barak, wherever Belz has a community, are now teaching a full secular education in addition to their Judaic studies. English, math, science, social studies, all of that?
Okay, yes, but two things. First of all, they haven't moved over all their schools yet, not all the elementary schools. It's a trial with, I don't remember how many of their schools, but a nice amount of them. And the second thing is that it's not, it's difficult to jump from what was to what should be. And therefore, they're being given some grace with the process and training teachers, etc. But yes, that's the direction.
Got it. Very interesting. Okay, so that's the work of the new Haredim. It sounds like it's a pretty sort of loose sort of association, affiliation, and mostly serves as having some type of formality to represent this type of person, right? And so that there's some entity that could speak on their behalf, like you said, send formal letters and so forth. So I get that.
And also to get things done. Like we've done campaigns and we've done lobbying. We just don't have this yearly plan that's set in stone and, milestone, etc. It's part of it is proactive and part of it is also reactive. Because we're responding to what's going on around us and what we want to get done. But and also not everybody's always interested in taking part in everything. It's more about somebody says we have to do something about XYZ, let's, and then a group forms around that thing and gets it done. There's also a lot of journalists, like most of the main Haredi and Haredi, those cover Haredi. Yeah, most of the Haredi journalistic world, a lot of it is in my group. So obviously interviews, spur of the moment, like this came up, can someone, be interviewed about it. So that's also part of our strength.
Got it. I want to give you some examples of groups that I'm aware of, and I'm going to ask you if they're affiliated. Menachem Bambach runs a network of his own type of sort of Haredi schools that did push to provide a better education. Is he involved in your organization or your initiative?
No, he's not, but we're on very good terms and he does great work.
Got it.
And we're definitely aware of each other's existence.
Got it. There's another person similar to him, Betzalel Cohen, maybe?
Yeah, he's part of our group.
He's part of your group. Okay, that's interesting. What about a person, Yoshua Pfeffer? Is he still active? I haven't heard from him in a while.
So, no, it's funny because I was just approached this week to do a podcast for them next week, also in English on their Ian podcast.
I see.
Let's just say that Rabbi Pfeffer and I don't see eye to eye politically, and he would not feel comfortable in my group.
Hold
But
on. You said earlier that your group has plenty of.
I didn't say I wouldn't allow him in my group. I said he would not feel comfortable
Okay.
in that group. It's feminism, and I'm in a group with him. I was first in the first cohort of women of the Haredi Tikva
Wow.
course. So that's, I know Rabbi Pfeffer way back, and I have great respect for him, but also we are not in
See.
agreement about certain things. And
Okay. That's fine. What about Hillel and Yotzim L'Shinui? These are two organizations that help people who leave the community. Are they part of your network?
again, I know Yossi Klar. We've discussed things together.
Well, the
We
people working
we
there, but
exchange ideas. Yeah. But the same way that I exchange ideas with Rabbi Pfeffer or
got it.
other people. We're not this organization that's like so formal that it's
No, I totally
affiliated or
understand.
unaffiliated.
Okay, I understand. I understand. I'm just trying to sort of get a bit of
Map it out.
of this organization. Okay, so the word feminist has come up a few times in this conversation. I actually remember reading somewhere that you identify as a feminist. What was interesting was earlier in this conversation, you said that when you were younger, you identified as a feminist, but now you just suggested that you still are. So let's talk about that. What does it mean to you? First of all, do you consider yourself a feminist? What does it mean to you? And so to give you one example, does it mean that you believe that women, including in this case Haredi women, should essentially be equal to the men?
It means that I believe that they are equal. It's just they aren't being given equal opportunity yet in all fields as they should be. When I say when I was younger, I identified as a feminist, that's very younger, like from a very young age, childhood. And the first person who called me a feminist was my father, with a mixture of trepidation and pride. Yeah, I was a troublemaker. Honestly, it didn't come from a troublemaking place. It just, landed that way in a place where, and I have to say, I didn't grow up in a super, like, I don't know, compared to my background as I described it to you and to my parents' generation, my parents are Haredi boomers. It's not like my mother has a profession. She's a speech therapist. She's retired now, but she always worked outside the home. She's college educated. My grandmother was a teacher. She would be
Mhm.
over 100 today. My other grandmother worked. So I didn't grow up with this idea of like women should be in the kitchen. That was not part of the
Right.
program. In fact, it was looked down upon. But when it came to more sensitive issues, which is where let's say also pomp and circumstance, just who makes kiddush, who does it, like how does the Shabbos table look. I think that's that's the first place where I noticed it, because in the day-to-day, right, it's true that the father goes to shul and the mother doesn't, but that's sort of like, it was early in the morning, it was before I even woke up. I don't know, it doesn't, like, you're not sitting at that table and watching something happen that's very clearly set up a certain way and very symbolic in a certain way. And even I didn't have the language then to say it, but I felt it, and I would question it. Like, why is it this way? Why does the setup look like this? Why can't it look
Right.
differently? So that's something that, I carry with me since a very, very young age.
So when you said at a young age, you didn't mean that you used to be a feminist, but now you're not. You just meant to say that it started at a very young age and it
Yeah,
continued.
yeah, I didn't outgrow it, unfortunately.
Okay. So let's talk about Kiddush, and we'll go through another few examples of roles of men and women in the Haredi world. So, from your perspective, Haredi women should be able to make Kiddush for the family.
Yes, it's halachically permissible.
Interesting. Okay, I learned something new today. What else?
Actually, at night, there are some opinions that it's preferable, meaning on a halachic level, it might be preferable for the woman to make kiddush if she didn't go to shul because she hasn't yet made kiddush, so to
I
speak.
see, I see.
Whereas the men said kiddush at Ma'ariv.
When
But then there's also a saying that something like "Woe be to the man whose wife has to make him kiddush," because basically that means he can't read.
I see. I see. So, but you're saying that that should be perfectly fine. So let's talk about other things that, like you said, they're not as glaring. You're not sitting around a Shabbos table, but being a rabbi, do you believe there should be women rabbis in the Haredi world who have equal sort of power and authority as the men
I
rabbis?
wouldn't define it as less glaring. That's pretty glaring. I mean,
No, no, you
that's
you yourself were giving that example of sitting around a table versus waking up in the morning and not even realizing that your father has a different role. That's all I'm trying to say. Of course, it could be just as glaring, but if you can answer, is your position that women, Haredi women, should be rabbis just like that?
in the modern Orthodox world. You already have Yatzot Halacha,
Yeah, they have
and
a much more reduced role in most communities, but
yeah, okay. So I'll say this: there are a few levels to this. First of all, in Israel, because rabbinical roles are state roles, meaning they are state funded, it's like a government office. Okay, the rabbinate is a government office, and
yeah.
so you cannot have a democratic, modern state that has a government office that basically offers jobs only to men. That's
Hmm.
crazy. It's also for dayanim, right? Now, if you want to have it on your private time, I'm not getting involved in that. If someone wants to
Yeah,
go to a based and run by men, that's perfectly fine. But every woman in Israel has to go before an all-male court
right,
in order to get divorced.
right.
So yes, that's totally unacceptable to me, and not just on a Haredi level, in general. Like there's a problem over there. So that's one problem. The other issue is that you have like the part that maybe that could clash with halacha, right? But those are really, really small parts. We don't really have even when we say a beit din, it doesn't hold the halachic gravity of what it means. It's really a borerut. It basically it doesn't have the halachic standing. Let's say, and there's no halachic problem with a woman being in the position of a borer, of sort of finding out,
Right. Someone who just
right?
basically presents to you what's written already by previous.
Exactly. So what I'm saying is this. My position is, in general, about everything, that the halacha, as we have it, without changing it and without challenging it, is a lot more flexible than we're trying to make it. Meaning it's a question also of approach. Like my approach is let's push halacha to its, outer limits, but
Mhm.
within the boundaries. And we're not going to achieve 100% equality that way. I personally am willing to accept that in my life. Other women might not. And that's perfectly fine if they want to challenge that boundary. But we
Mhm.
can get from, I don't know, from point A, which is like 30%, to point B, which is like 85%. If we get that far in my lifetime, I'm very happy.
I hear. I want to tell you a funny story. Years ago, I used to work in a warehouse. Every so often, we needed an extra pair of hands or two, and I had a forum where I would post this, a forum of other people who left the Haredi community, which is what I was mostly affiliated with at the time. And I would post there, hey, if anyone's looking for like a quick side gig, a day or two work, we're looking for a male, strong. This is the work. Basically, you're going to unload a massive trailer of heavy boxes all day. Just hard physical labor. And I remember there was a woman who said, why only men? What if I want to work there? And it was one of those things that was like, it's a dirty warehouse. I knew the woman, very feminine, uh, hasn't been in that kind of like dirty environment, has probably not lifted this kind of stuff. The boxes are dirty, the environment's dirty, the boxes are heavy. And it's one of those cases where it sometimes feels like feminists are pushing it a little bit too far. It's like there's like a physical difference between men and women, and you just have to accept it. Don't try to push it on, force it on us. And I'm wondering if some people in the community, when they hear you talking about these things, They feel like you're sort of trying to deny a certain type of reality. And in this case, even more so, going against their tradition. You might say that halacha, we could push it to the outer boundaries and it'll somehow allow it. But they'll say there's tradition of thousands of years and you're trying to undermine it.
I'm sure there are people who say that because they say it to my face. But I'll say this: there's two. You're mixing. This is a little bit of a salad. So let me.
Respond to all. Go ahead.
Yeah, so let me organize. Okay, yes, there are physical differences between men and women. If a woman says, I want to work in a warehouse, okay, it's not interesting right now if she's a woman or not. It's interesting if she's capable of doing the job. If she was capable of doing the job, you can hire her, right? If
Well,
you if
am I
she was
capable?
6 feet tall and worked out every day in the gym and she said, I can do this, would you not hire her because she was a woman?
It happens to be we there was an agency that would sometimes send workers and we didn't tell them who to send. They send women and whatever. Sometimes there were issues about that. So you're right. If physically they were able to do it, I happen to have known the person. And I also do think that as we see in sports, and this gets into a whole nother topic that I was planning on bringing up with you when it comes to
Yeah.
trades, is that generally speaking, the strongest woman is still not as strong as sometimes the weakest man. I don't mean that in a
No, it doesn't work
very
like
general
that.
sense.
The range is different, but okay.
I mean in the sports and the athletic world, right? But similarly speaking, that you just even a woman who's prepared for this kind of work. But let's put that aside. It was just a funny
Yeah,
story that I was reminded as you were talking
let's.
about it. And to me, it sort of like brought up this memory of feminism going too far. But keeping it to this example, do you feel like many people would see it as undermining tradition? You said people say it to your face, but what do you say to people who say, okay, so you're trying to foist upon the community this kind of value that they just don't agree with?
Okay, so first of all, I'm not trying to foist anything upon anybody because what in a public role, only public policy work involves women, Haredi women being represented around decision-making tables, not Haredi women davening without a mechitza, not Haredi women reading the Torah, not Haredi women even saying Kaddish, not even Haredi women studying Gemara, which I had a group in my home who did that. But again, that's not a policy paper. The policy that I insist upon is that in a political party cannot not like you cannot stop just not have any women representatives ever, like Haredi women not have a political voice. Okay, that's my public facing work, feminist work. Okay, everything else is my personal opinion, which I freely express because I'm on a podcast and I just said it. But I'm not foisting it upon anyone.
Got it.
I am very concerned. Again, I don't have an active role in this except expressing my opinion, which to me is not enough of a role, but in the fact that the rabbinate as an official entity, I don't think that, that's also that's already public policy, okay? So, and there are ways of fixing it. And, there can be arguments about it and there can be discussions about it. I will say again also when I have guests sometimes for Shabbos, and some of them are families that have a man at the head of the household. And I will always offer them to make Kiddush, and they will always say, you're a feminist, why don't you make Kiddush? And I say, because I enjoy sometimes, being in a traditional
Right.
setting. And that's fine. People can have personal preferences. That's
Right.
not the same. When you say foisted, I'm saying don't foist upon people your traditions, meaning if you
Mm.
want to do something in your own home, I'm not getting involved. If your
Right.
wife wants to wash all the dishes and cook all the food and wash all the floors and raise all the kids, more power to her. I can't stop her. I'm not going to teach you. The only thing that I point out to men is when they tell me I'm babysitting tonight and they're talking about their own children. I cannot hold myself back, but ask, whose kids are you babysitting tonight?
I've
Because
had this happen to me plenty of times. It's funny, I find that it's actually not that they're so not accustomed to watching their kids, because I'm actually like, we split our time very nicely. I am all over my kids, very doting and all of that. It's just the language. I didn't have the language, so I once actually posted it like publicly, like I'm baby my kids, and it was like people were like attacking me. It's funny, but I have a quick question, then I wanted to get to something that's very important. First of all, you've said somewhere that you are an advocate for like a pluralistic society. What does that mean, and what value do you see in that?
That's an interesting thing. I don't know why I said that. I mean, I'm not against it, but I wouldn't say that my main focus is on pluralism. We have pluralism. We just maybe we should get along better in our pluralism here. For me, I feel like my main thing is equality, human rights, how do you say chemla, compassion? I want to see just overall more compassion for poor people, even if they're Haredi and even if they did it to themselves. And I want to see more compassion for Palestinians, even if their relatives are terrorists. I just want to see overall there's a lack of compassion that I think we could do better with as Jews, as Israelis, overall. So that's my main concern. Like for me, for example, my both my Haredi and my left wing advocacy and my feminism can boil down to, more opportunities for people and more compassion for people. And, I don't get that's why I don't get very bothered about ideology, even though I can go on and on about my ideology and how, I arrange it in my head. But I don't think opinions are as important as boots on the ground and what you do for people, and like, I don't care if a guy says he's a feminist. The question is how he treats his wife.
Hmm.
I don't, I don't care if I don't know if people say they want the entire land of Israel from the river to the sea, but they're able to treat their neighbors with dignity even though they're Palestinian. I think there's it's we don't live on paper. We live in the world. So that's what drives me.
Okay. So I remember, from all my years of trying to get yeshivas in New York to provide a better secular education, that the position here was explicitly that they should have to be, quote, substantially equivalent, unquote, to that of public schools. Okay. That's how the law framed it. And the idea was that you could have a private school, but they still have to provide a pretty similar education to that of the public schools. And I think for many Americans that resonates with them because they believe in this idea of a melting pot, right? So sure, all communities should be pretty similar. And it took me many years, like too many years, unfortunately, in my opinion, to see that that's not necessarily a good thing. Okay, to force this melting pot, because some communities they have like 1,000 year or more traditions that could offer a better and more wholesome, world or whatever to what secular society has to offer. And I find that it's even cruel and counterproductive when you want to force on them, not you, but I'm saying when people want to force on them to sort of assimilate into what mainstream society considers good or normal. So when people try to change something in the Haredi community, is it your view that they should conform to some sort of external standard that, let's say, the secular world provides, or more like the modern Orthodox community? What is it? And I'll tell you, one of the reasons I'm particularly curious about this is because you've said multiple times that the government shouldn't sanction it, but it is Israel. It is a Jewish state. And if it's a Jewish state, then in theory, they should operate within the confines of the Torah, I think, maybe even halacha. So you're saying no. You're saying no. It should be based on, I don't know, France's understanding of equality, America's understanding. Like, what should it be measured against?
We have a Bill of Independence in Israel that was signed, including by the Haredim who founded the state. And it says very simply what stance is, meaning it's a democratic state. That doesn't have to collide with anybody's Judaism. It's just a framework. I don't think there are many Haredim who would appreciate being under a what we would call a halachic state and not a democratic state. They don't push for it. They wouldn't want it. They would like maybe, more power within certain systems of the state, maybe changing the balance in their favor, but they don't want to live in a non-democratic state.
So, okay, so if we rule that out, what do you have
And
left? what are you measuring it against? Who do you want the Haredim to look more like? You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so there are people who do the things that are similar to me who will have this idea of we should make the Haredim this way or another way. And that's not, again, I'm speaking for myself now and for my organization. I don't see it that way at all. I'm a liberal person in my personality, but I don't align myself with liberals in that way. I don't think that you can or should tell people how to live, okay? What you do have to do is provide them with the same opportunities that everybody else is provided in the state, meaning if education is a right, then Haredim should also be given that right, those who want it, okay? Those who don't, I'm not going to be the one to force them or close their schools down, etc., unless it's a danger to the children or something of that. The state does provide certain funding for these schools, even though they're private, so it can sanction them in certain ways, but I don't think that should be that's not the main theme of the party here at all. My main theme is provide opportunities for those who are asking for it, who are saying, we want to be Haredi, we want to stay in our communities. Please give us a school that teaches math and English, like Bells. No one's telling them don't be a Bells or Chassid, okay? And that's a huge distinction for me in general. Like, also don't like when right-wing governments go to East Jerusalem and tell the schools over there, we'll give you money, but now you have to teach Israeli history to your children who aren't even Israeli citizens. They should do the matriculation in Tanakh. Like, why? Like, why are you, trying to force people into that's,
Do they do that, by the way?
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's a recent development. It comes from also from a good place. Like they're finally getting funding, and they're so underfunded, and now they're getting funding. But that's part of it, and that's a whole different kettle of fish. Haredim are not, a national how do you say, conflict, and 100. It's not like
Right.
that. But I'm just saying this goes for everybody. This kind of approach for me, like let people be who they are.
Got it.
But let's say, okay, you're going to be a Belzer Chassid and you're going to get a decent education. And then when you grow up, you can decide if you're that type that you want to learn for the rest of your life. No one's going to stop you. You
Hmm.
can do that. You
Well,
can wear shtreimel. You can wear weiße.
when it comes to serving in the military, isn't your position that the government should require it?
My position is that if there's a law that applies to everybody, you can't, under that law, exempt people just because of how they were born. It's not right that my children, okay, are.
Mm, hold on, hold on. So isn't that a bit contradictory? You don't want
Wait,
you,
I'll
okay,
tell you what I think.
okay, go.
If you let me finish my thought, I
Sure.
don't think it's right that my children, that I get to sleep at night and somebody else doesn't just because of the way we were born. Okay. This is about, and especially in the past few years, we've seen it's also about life and death. It's about people losing their children, losing their spouses, losing their friends. It's about coming back injured, whether physically or mentally or morally. There's a lot of, so, but my solution, if I was running the country and I ran the world and everybody listened to me, is that you give a conscientious objector pass to anybody who asks for it. Okay, and me as a Haredi woman, that's how I didn't go to the army. All Haredi women are exempt as conscientious objectors. That's what's spoon.
What's
So
the
if
point?
it's
Wouldn't that be just another way of having the same exact outcome? Every Haredi man would be a conscientious
and
objector.
woman, yes, they would be,
What's the
but there
point?
would also be a lot of you would have a lot of conscientious objectors, not a lot, but you would have a nice amount of conscientious objectors elsewhere as well, whether secular people who just don't feel like it, or the far left that really conscientious
But you're
objectors.
saying that already exists. They're already able to do it. That's what you used to
No,
get.
they go to jail. If you're not religious and you don't
Oh,
go to the army and you say I'm a conscientious objector, you
I
get
see.
yourself sat in army jail.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's not right to me, that somebody's kid should have to sit in jail and somebody's kid could just be
Right.
okay. And it's also it wasn't meant to be like this, because it wasn't meant to be this widespread social phenomenon. It was meant to
Right.
be this small contained phenomenon,
Few
and now
hundred.
it's not, and
Right.
now it's just patently wrong. But if you create a system where, like, some people can go on, like in America, right? Not everybody has to go to the army.
Right.
You give incentives, whatever. We're obviously in a different situation, so we need an army, but definitely the Haredi parties, like, they should have, wanted to do this, but they didn't. Anyways, this is an issue, by the way, that's why I took the year off officially from doing this, because I knew that this was going to be the issue, and I knew that I don't have the answers. I don't have good answers. It's one of these situations where it's damned if you do and damned if you don't. And I don't like wars, so this whole thing was like not, and there are people who are more involved in this. I've never really made this my
See.
forte, but this is where I become religious, and I'm just like, let's hope the wars end and we don't have to deal with this anymore,
I see.
or get minimized enough so that because it's terrible.
Okay, I have another question. This is a pretty sore topic. In my opinion, one of the ways in which society has become so sort of corrupted and sort of went off track that it's sort of served as the best marketing campaign and given a lot of ammunition for religious and conservative groups, and it's the issue of transgender. So, what is your position on transgender? A man who transitions to a woman, is it a woman?
I've literally never had to deal with this, like, ever. No.
It's not a common phenomenon in Israel, you're telling me?
There are transgender people, like, we're not American. We don't, like, get all twisted up about, like, and it's all like being transgender. It's not like it's like you and abortions in America also. Like, no one goes around talking about whether they are pro-life or against abortions and da 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 da. That's not our thing. We have other things to deal with.
I think one reason it became this way was because the government then determined that a man who transitions to a woman is a woman and vice versa, and implemented laws calling it, discrimination if you sort of don't go along with it. Suddenly, a lot of people, especially, like I said, religious and conservative people, were like, now you're bringing it to my doorstep. It becomes a problem with employment, with, religious discrimination if, it involves attending a shul and things like that. So I wouldn't
Oh,
downplay.
actually, there was a transgender in my neighborhood who was religious, and she went to shul, and she asked Orthodox shul, yeah, and the very, very Orthodox rabbi told her to daven in the women's section.
Interesting. Okay, I'm asking mostly because, like, I'm wondering how Haredim sort of feel if they're represented, because my experience has been that even sort of the new Haredim would not feel comfortable with that kind of position.
It's like a non-issue. It's like, I'm trying to think, like, of a issue that I would bring up to you. It's like it's like in America, okay, if we talk about the draft, it's not a thing.
I see.
Like, no one's going around talking about it. It's like, you might encounter it and have an opinion about it, but there's a very, very fringe, like, on the far religious right here, who, like, gets all, like, into their feelings about it, but no one cares one way or another. There's, like, I don't know, point blah 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 percent of trans people, and they should be like, okay, like, what are you gonna, like, it's not a thing.
Okay. So let's go back to New Haredim. You have the New Haredim in Israel. First of all, who funds it? Is it the New Israel Fund? Is that the umbrella?
They funded me. They gave me a grant.
Okay, but now it's independent, separate from it.
Well, I got other grants as well. They were my first grants, so
I
I
see.
have a lot of hakarat tov to them. And this year I didn't work on funding at all.
I see. Is there something like that in the U.S., or do you think it should be something
Like a new Haredim in the U.S.
Yeah.
I think you
I mean,
should
obviously, we don't have the draft issue here. So one of the three topics is gone.
No, that's not one of my topics. That's one of, like, the markers. But in my organization, we dealt with education, women's rights, and sexual assault. Those were the three main things. The draft was like, there are bigger organizations that deal with it. So that I'm like an orphanage. We deal with the things that nobody else dealt with.
So do you feel like this should be one in the U.S., in New York, or elsewhere?
First of all, you're more equipped to answer that than I am. I will say that the Israeli political system is very different. So it would be a different, like, setup, right? Like, you could create that sort of lobby or, network that could always serve you. yes, but
Mhm.
how you would utilize it would probably look very differently because
Right.
you would not be, first of all, you would not be arguing with Haredi politicians on your positions.
Mhm.
You might find more of an open ear with the people who are representing Jews because they have to represent a much wider range of people. They're not, even if they are Haredi or they are something else, they're usually representing like a wide range of people in your area. So it would have to look different. But
I
do I
see.
think you could gain? Yes. I think that it's a relatively powerful tool for not like a crazy amount of investment.
I see. Interesting.
It's taking the energy that already exists. You're not building a million people up. Like you're taking the energy that exists and you're consolidating it and you're giving back to it somewhat by
I see.
doing.
Wow. Thank you so much.